Good afternoon. Welcome to the tea table. I am so happy you have joined me this afternoon, this cozy October golden autumn royal glory painted all around us. I'm sure all of you have beautiful trees and the leaves are turning. Well, I am wearing something very special. I am wearing a royal gift from my nephew, Elliot. He sent me this hat as a surprise gift, and I think it is just perfect for October. And I found a shawl in my collection that I think has all the colors: gold, brown, maroon, and even at the tip a touch of orange. And it's a little bit of a different play on the autumn colors, but they often have this deep maroon and gold. Every color is in a leaf if you pick it up and analyze a maple leaf. So much vibrancy. Reminds me of when you go to an art gallery and you come to a great painting and you come up close and you see the detail, and it's not what you think from far away, is it? No. I remember the pearls in the London Gallery painted by Hobart, and the pearls were so different. It was big dots of white on a gray, and then they reflect and look just like a pearl. Oh my goodness. Well, if you haven't gotten your tea yet, please pause and get your tea, and I'll be waiting for you. And I've chosen a royal tea set. This is very special to me. My husband's mother gave this to me as one of our engagement gifts, and she had bought it at the factory in Bavaria. It's a mother of pearl and gold with touches of pink and the very famous, I call it the Goethe German. It's spelled, when we think of pronouncing it, we often pronounce it Goethe. Goethe, the great romantic poet. But in German, it's Goethe. And he was the romantic poet that I feel reflects this beautiful china. And I will pour out a cup of tea for you. And it's brisk, black, hot British tea today. Tetley tea, one of my favorites. It's a basic, good black tea. And I will have a splash of milk. And we are listening to George Friedrich Handel, the water music, the famous music he wrote for the celebration of King George winning a battle, a peace treaty with France. Oh my, I told you before, it's interesting. The scene is always painted that way so that it's facing me if I'm right-handed, but if I'm left-handed, which I am not, it's facing you. But I want you to see the beauty of this china. It's very delicate. These are called little demitasse, and they were really for very strong coffee. After a dinner, you would have just a demitasse, like an espresso. And perhaps that's where cappuccino came from. If people wanted a little milk, they would put, but it's one small, very small cup, very dark. But I have a spectacular royal dessert for you. It's opera cake, mocha opera cake. Isn't it beautiful? And I put it on a gold German plate, which has, you can't see, but has the same scene. And I used a piece of my sterling silver fork. And I think when you have a party, a tea party, a royal tea party, use your best silver, your best china. This is when you want to use it. And you can taste the feeling that's in a piece of sterling silver, particularly if you serve a hot soup. You feel the warmth in your thumb and in your fingers when you hold the handle of the spoon. Isn't that lovely? People have just tossed out their silver and thrown it away, and it's very sad. But if you have some family heritage silver that has been passed down to you, I encourage you, use it. That is the philosophy of the tea table. Yes, use it. Don't save it for a rainy day in a cabinet. Well, this color is so fun, and I found these earrings upstairs. They have the red, orange, and pink. Now that's kind of what this is doing. The orangey, reddy, pink, gold. And Elliot, thank you so much. He's my loyal, wonderful nephew. My younger brother David and his wife April's oldest son Elliot, and he is a soccer star. He's played professionally, and now he has a soccer company in Mercer Island, and he's a coach for all kinds of teams and sells the equipment, and just a wonderful person. And he watches this Tea Talk. Thank you, Elliot. And he wants to support me and help me. And I had mentioned to him once, I think I get the most views when I wear a dramatic hat. And he wants to help me expand my channel. And so he sent me not one, but 2 fabulous hats. I've never even seen a hat like this. It's so gorgeous. The other one I'm going to save for November. Yes. So make sure you watch all of the Tea Talks because it will be coming. Well, this week has been very special, spectacular. And our Mariners won. Now, they lost last night, but we're cheering tonight, right? They're going to win tonight. Yes, they are. Back in Safeco Field in Seattle. Very exciting to have this October baseball in the air. October has so much in it. And I forgot to tell you that last week, October 9th, our president declared officially October 9th is Leif Erikson Day. Yes, for the Norwegians. But then we know that October 10th, traditionally, or the first Monday in October, the second Monday in October it is celebrated, is Columbus Day. And I have this fabulous book that is on Christopher Columbus, and this is called Columbus and Columbia. And it is a commemorative book from the 1892 World's Fair in Chicago that commemorated Christopher Columbus coming 400 years before in 1492. This book is so awesome. It's so heavy. And I had one that was partially had fallen apart. And one of my special Tea Talk people, Stephen, he went out and sent me this as a gift. Now here is a picture of Christopher Columbus standing before Ferdinand and Isabella. And I'll try to, whoa, this is a really heavy book. And the statue of Columbia, which, remember Columbia movies, often they'll have the statue of the Lady Columbia. Now that's based on the statue of the Lady Columbia, but the big statue of Christopher Columbus was always in Chicago. And you know, when you go to Chicago and you go to all the beautiful museums down by Lake Michigan, the Museum of History and Industry. I went there at the age of 4, and I remember it. We went back on a trip as a family, and I remember going in and seeing Graham Bell's telephone, that his first telephone, and they let you put it to your ear, and the other person stood down and could speak with their mouth, and it was I remember this. I was 4. And this is why museums are so important. Well, that was built for it was called the Great Columbia Exhibition. And they wanted it to be the biggest and best World Fair that had ever happened. And then there's the beautiful, the Field Museum is there. And I believe that's of all the nature and animals. And I don't know exactly what the Field Museum, and then there's the Art Institute of Chicago. Well, all these, and many of the buildings, my daughter and son-in-law just went to Chicago, and they were on a historic tour, and they went and visited the original library, and they said it was just phenomenal. It's all, like we talked about, Tiffany glass dome, printing in the cement of great sayings of Plato, Aristotle, Milton, and statues. Anyway, that is the old city library, which now they've made into a center, a cultural center that people use for different events, but they retained it, and it's beautiful. But that was part of this building. And then my daughter said they walked by the Opera House, and they couldn't go in, they didn't have time, but that's probably part of it. Chicago was the center of America. Every train would go through Chicago. And my mother was born in Chicago and lived in Chicago, and actually met my father, who was from here in Chicago, and they married in Chicago in 1944 in Stone Church. And so I grew up hearing all the wonderful stories of Chicago. And this World's Fair, you can look up, was so beyond phenomenal. And there are pictures of it in here. It went on for months, and it was opened in prayer. They had a tremendous minister named Buell, and he opened in prayer. And here's the front piece picture of Christopher Columbus on the boat, first sighting land. And I'm assuming all these paintings are back there somewhere. I literally can't pick this book up. It doesn't look that heavy. It's probably about 20 pounds. These old books were made with such incredible art and beauty. Well, the thing about Christopher Columbus that I love is the story, really, when he was so desperate. Remember, he is an example of a person who didn't give up. He had everything against him. He had a dream and a vision that he would cross the ocean. He had faith in God. He literally felt God had told him to do this. It was such a far out thing that he would have a boat, or he ended up with, 3 boats, and he went to everyone. And of course he was from Genoa, Italy, and the Italians couldn't help him, and many people laughed at him. So if people laugh at you for your dream or vision, don't worry, don't give up. If your vision and your dream is from God, you will fulfill it. But do you know he finally went, he thought, I'll travel up to Spain. And he had heard the Queen, Isabella, was very interested in expanding Spain. So he went before the king and queen, showed them his plans, talked to them, and she said to him, we are in a very serious war. We are in a war, and we're going to be, if we don't win this war, Spain will be gone. Spain was a Christian, it was a Catholic Christian country. And what you had was the Moors, Moors, and that's an old-fashioned name for the Muslims. They were coming up and trying to take Europe. And they had been they'd gotten a little bit into Spain, but not all the way. And she said, I want you to pray, and if God helps us win the battle and defeat the Moors in Spain and keep Spain Christian, I will give an offering to you, enough money to go across the ocean for your discovery journey. Well, in this book, and I don't know if I can find it, but there is a picture of Isabella going out to the battle. She goes out. This book is really a fabulous history book because it gives all of American history, and then it goes to when Columbus and Queen Isabella, she goes out dressed in, believe it or not, she's dressed as a knight's armor, and she stands at the edge of the battle while they're fighting. She's a brave woman. And they defeat the Moors. And good to her word, I can't find it right now, but I'm sure you could look it up online and find it. Good to her word, she gave Christopher Columbus an offering. So I think that is so significant that a queen had faith and prayed to God if they would win the battle. And it was a spiritual battle indeed. They won the battle, and she gave her offering to Columbus. And Columbus finds America. And his journals are filled with prayers to God. Columbus suffers. If you study the story of Christopher Columbus, it wasn't just get on the boat and go find America, come back and be a great person. No. He had mutiny. He had men on his ship that became fearful. They thought they were going to die. They rebelled against him. He had so many problems. He had storms at sea. And when he got there, he thought he had reached Asia, India. He didn't know. The maps had not been drawn yet. This is 1492. And if you remember that talk I gave, you that have been on the tea table for a long time, about a year ago, I talked about Sir Francis Drake, who went out under Queen Elizabeth I. Well, that was about 100 years later, a little bit less, and she sent him out, and he circumvented the earth and drew maps. That is the first time they really understood and had maps. And of course, Sir Walter Raleigh went out under Elizabeth I. So this period, when you think of 1492, it's a date you want to keep in your mind. Martin Luther is born right about this time. And so then remember a little bit before, you move into the 1500s, and he starts the Protestant Reformation, 1517. He nails the theses. It's a good way for you to remember the leaving of the Middle Ages and the beginning of the Reformation. You had the Renaissance going in Italy during the time of Christopher Columbus. That's why he was going around and trying to get help. He had dreams and hopes. And then you go up Martin Luther, and then you go into remember King Henry VIII is in England, right? Because if you want an interesting historical fact, that queen and king, Ferdinand and Isabella of Spain, their daughter, Catherine of Aragon, she was the first wife of King Henry. And she was the mother of Mary. Remember? There was the battle between Mary and Elizabeth, the two half-sisters, because Elizabeth had a different mother, Anne Boleyn. Remember, Henry had 6 wives. So, yeah, so that's all in this era. It's really fascinating. It's such an important era. And then when Queen Elizabeth, the daughter of Henry VIII, takes the throne, she develops the British Navy. That's when England really expands, and they end up going all around the world, and trade starts, and that's when they get tea and coffee comes to England. Hard to believe, before that time they didn't have that. It had to come on ships, right? But they fell in love with tea. They all did, and it came quickly. And by the time you're in 1776 and you have the American Revolution, everyone is drinking tea, and a war starts over it. Remember? Taxing the tea? Tea is a very important item in the history of the world. Yes, you could just do a little talk on that. Significance of tea. Well, how has your week been going? I felt like when I received this gorgeous hat, I was saving it. I felt October. I'll save it for mid-October, and I have a little purse. I thought this is a royal tea party, and this is a little royal purse. Isn't it adorable? And what it has on it, it has a picture of people going to the opera and the masked ball afterwards. So it's so detailed. It's obviously handmade. Look at the detail on that. And then it's green and black velvet. And the little snap is green and black velvet. The black beaded handle. And it opens like this. Is there anything inside? No, there's nothing inside this one. I always like to look in my purses I haven't used, because I often find things in there. Whoops. So isn't it nice? It kind of has the autumn tone, the black velvet. I have this fabulous, I'm going to call this Sir Eliot hat. The Sir Eliot hat. And I'm having a royal tea party with you today. I encourage all of you, why not have a royal October tea party? We're just ending Oktoberfest days. And I think my husband and I, we're going to go over to Leavenworth. I think we're going to try to do it tomorrow to get the last weekend of Oktoberfest and the beautiful, beautiful leaves. We like to drive over Highway 2. We do it as a day trip and leave early, drive over Highway 2, see the leaves, see that beautiful Stevens Pass. Oh my goodness. For you who do not live in Washington State, it's going over the Cascade Mountains. It's a beautiful mountain range. And you've probably heard of Mount St. Helens, Mount Baker, Mount Adams, and then it goes down to Mount Hood in Portland, and then it keeps going down, and it hits Mount Shasta in California. That's all part of this Cascade Range. And then when you go another, I guess, 500 miles, 700 miles east, you're going to hit the Rocky Range, which starts up in Canada. And that goes all the way down to Glacier Park. Well, it starts Banff and Lake Louise, beautiful, jagged Canadian Rockies, and then it goes to Glacier Park, then it goes down into Idaho. No, I'm sorry, not Idaho, Montana, maybe a tip of Idaho, but down to Colorado. That's those beautiful Colorado Rockies. So we have these two massive ranges on the western side of America. And then there's a little range that is to the west of me, and it's called the Coastal Range. And there's a lake called Summit Lake, a beautiful lake that is just 20 minutes from my house, between me and the Pacific Ocean. And the Coastal Range goes all the way down to Oregon, also from Washington. So we have a lot of mountains. And I haven't even mentioned the Olympic Mountains, which are to the, the west. No, they're to the northwest of me. They're directly northwest of me. And they are so beautiful. I love the Olympic Mountains. They're just spectacular. You can't really drive, you drive around the Olympics, you can climb the Olympics, but it hasn't been developed with roads other than logging roads, and they did have trains, logging trains, but not people trains. And so, but they're gorgeous. They're gorgeous, and they lean out against, actually, they're between the Puget Sound and the Straits of Juan de Fuca, and then they're between that and Canada. Because when you're up in Victoria, BC, you see the other side of the Olympics. And I didn't mention Grouse Mountain, which is a beautiful ski resort up in Vancouver, BC. And I don't know if that relates to I don't think it relates to the Cascades. I think the Cascades start in Washington State, up there with Mount Baker, and then it comes down to Rainier, Mount Rainier, and then Mount Adams, and then St. Helens. And actually, if you analyze it, which is to me fascinating, all of these mountains are fairly high. It's just that Mount Rainier is the highest. That's why Mount Rainier is the most famous. But if Mount Adams were in another state, it would be the most famous mountain, or Mount Baker. They're high and they're snow covered, and they have glaciers, and they're very treacherous. You don't just climb those mountains. You train, and you better know what you're doing, because mountains are very, very dramatic and beautiful, and they can be very treacherous. Yes. Well, I was going to say, when I go to Leavenworth, it is also surrounded by mountains. And those are, of course, the Cascades and the Cascade foothills. And this little, for you who live out of state and haven't been, Leavenworth is a little city that looks like Bavaria. And it's a little Bavarian German city that was created after World War II. And I happen to be friends. I have a dear friend, and her name is Edelweiss. Her real name is Arlene. But I named her Edelweiss because we met around Edelweiss. And someday I'll tell you that story. But she had two uncles that came from the army. They were in World War II. They were traveling back to Washington State, their home, and went over eastern Washington, and they came to this little village, and they said, "My goodness, this looks just like the German Alps. It looks like Bavaria. It looks like Berchtesgaden and Garmisch. We should build a town here." And that was the dream. And they started the town of Leavenworth. And it is so lovely. And in the fall, they have the Autumn Leaf Festival, they call it, or Oktoberfest days, for 3 weekends in October. And then they have the Christmas lighting in December, and have the beautiful Weihnachten German Christmas. And my husband and I, we have gone to Leavenworth very often. Spring, it's beautiful in the spring, it's beautiful in the summer, and it's gorgeous in the fall. and fall is the number one time I think people go, and perhaps December. But they have built these buildings so authentic, and they have all the paintings on the walls, just like if you've been to Bavaria, you've been to Innsbruck, you've been to Salzburg, or any of those little, well, Salzburg is not little, but any of the German cities there in the Bavarian area of Germany. And they have the music and dancing, and they wear the costumes, and they have the German food and little shops, and it's just a wonderful place. They have the nutcrackers, and it's a happy little one-day trip. So that's what I think we're going this weekend for, at least a day. And I encourage all of you, get out in the leaves. We've been trying to go out every day. We went down to Capitol Lake and walked around the lake, and the leaves are just perfect right now. They're not falling yet. They're on the trees, and they're just, every day we've gone, they turn another color. And I think I've told you this in the past. My mother always said, in October, God takes his paintbrush out. He's painting us a beautiful scene. Aren't we blessed? Every season has beauty. Let's breathe it in. Just like there are different foods and fruits and vegetables that come different times of the year, so it is with the beauty around us. So important to drink it in, and in the summer to enjoy the pears, the berries. Now in the fall we're going to enjoy the apples and the pears also, and the squash and the grapes. Yes, I think whatever is in season is meant to be consumed, and at least had a little bit. I personally love squash with a meal. I think it's a wonderful complement to any meal. I feel rich if I have beets on my plate and yellow squash. Yes. I feel those are the golden, nutrient-rich foods that God has given us. So let us enjoy them. And a little, you could cut this in half. And I remember being in Austria, they would have, this would be half of this and frosted around, called Petit Fours. And they're just perfect. This is a little big. Just split it with someone. Very romantic, yes. Well, thank you so much for joining me. We are playing Handel's music. We were playing his Royal Fireworks, and he's one of my favorites. He was writing music in the 1700s, right at the time of the American Revolution. Yes, and Bach had just was in that period. Those are called the Baroque composers. And then they're followed by Beethoven and Mozart, and they're called the classical period. Yes. Well, have a fabulous weekend, and go Mariners. I love this team. What they're playing with their heart, and we are hoping and praying for a win tonight. Okay, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please subscribe, push the notification bell, and a like. I really appreciate a like, and I love your comments. Thank you for your comments, and share this with a friend. Yes. Okay. Well, I will look forward to seeing you next time. God bless. Have a fabulous week.